Welcome back. It is exactly 12 o'clock, and this, of course, is the Mid Morning Talk Show with me, Julie Ali. And don't know about you, but normally around about this time of year, I just feel so exhausted. And I don't really have an appetite for anything that's going to strain the grey cells any further. Um, and I don't think it's only me, but I'm kind of find that I'm very easily triggered. I'm very irritable, and all I can put it down to is perhaps being stressed out, being overworked, being tired. And I think the one word to describe it all would probably be burnout. So we're going to unpack behind burnout. Why is it that we run on empty this time of year? With other people, it could be any time of the year. It might even be the beginning of the new year when we're all supposed to come back and embrace the new year with renewed vigor and energy. So, we're going to talk with an industrial psychologist about what exactly is behind burnout. Is it really our own mindset? Can we master our negative thinking? Or is it the issues that we've been exposed to mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually that leads us to this point? Ras Naidoo, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much.
Okay, you are an industrial psychologist, and I'm just
Yes,
kind of wondering. You heard my introduction, a very long
yes.
commentary,
Mhm.
and having said all of that, which you are going to respond to, um, is it, could I take this type of an issue to perhaps a clinical psychologist? And when we talk burnout, are we only talking you and I in corporate spaces? Or are we talking right across the board? Are we talking domestic help? Are we talking teachers? Are we even talking learners and students at school? Welcome.
Thank you, Julie. Absolutely. More so, just to touch on your last point, burnout affects anybody. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean whether your job is, intense or not intense, whether you are a domestic worker or a surgeon or a pilot. Burnout basically tells me that when your body just can't go anymore, and I think you said it quite eloquently earlier on, is when you wake up in the morning, you just don't have that requisite energy to go on because something is telling you either mentally or physically or spiritually or even psychologically, something is remiss. That energy, that battery that you normally have that carries you to go forward is just telling you, Russ, today isn't the day. And I also often, compare it to an accelerator of a car. When you push the accelerator, nothing happens, and the car doesn't move. It tells you that your body doesn't want to go forward. But to answer your question, it affects everybody. More so, students now who are writing matric, who are stressed out and panicked. What's going to happen? Am I going to pass? How am I going to afford my studies next year? What am I going to study? It also could be for those people who are getting their 13th check in 2 or 3 weeks' time to think, I'm going to get a salary now and a 13th check. Am I going to make January? Am I going to make school fees? Am I going to start the year off? So technically, there are many factors in the ecosystem, Julie, that can affect a person. And there are many issues and factors that can affect a person towards ultimately becoming burnt out. That's basically
So
what I wanted to share.
let me put the question in a different way.
Sure.
So if you look at someone, or if someone says, I'm stressed out, or if someone says, I'm
Yes.
exhausted,
Mm.
is that what burnout is all about? Being under tremendous amount of stress and being really exhausted. Does that does that equate to burnout, or is it two
Yes.
totally different things?
Now, I'll try and define the two for you. So stress for us as psychologists is basically it's everyday work. It could be a deadline, a tough meeting, a busy week, where you need rest and recovery. Burnout is different. Burnout is more prolonged. It's sort of unmanaged stress that drains your energy and motivation and can even impact your identity. So burnout is a bit more longer. Stress is probably more short term, where you're like saying, something happened. I'm now stressed as a result of this. Therefore, I am so and so. But if stress is left unmatched or unmanaged for a long period of time, it then can become burnout. For example, a project manager who's juggling many deadlines for months without support, without a platform, without colleagues. At first, they think, I can do this, I can push, I can manage, I can do this. And then eventually, over time, they stop caring about their work. They start to avoid their colleagues. And they even start to sort of dread logging in the morning. And that's burnout, where it gets to that, that emotional withdrawal where you're like, you know what? I've just been running and running and running, and I don't have rest. So, whereas stress is a bit more momentarily where we can manage it, but burnout is a bit more longer where stress becomes unmanaged and then it becomes symptomatic and it starts to affect your entire life. Does it answer your question, Julie?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's so worrisome the way you've actually explained this. I look around me and I see so many people on the cusp of burnout,
Mm,
and there's so many reasons to it. It's this instant age that we're living in. It's
mm.
this very competitive environment that we're in.
Yes.
It's also this consumer society that we're in. So
Yes.
all of
Mm,
that impacts because all of us want bigger and better of everything. We all
yes.
want to have arrived or working to arriving.
Mm.
And why do we do this to ourselves, Russ? As a psychologist, how do you respond to that question?
Okay. Without putting a disclaimer on the screen, I'm going to try and answer as best I can. I think, Julie, from the time we are small, we always graded on, the barometer or the ruler on everybody else. You go to school, there's a bell curve of marks. You compare to everybody else. Everybody in the class can't get 60 out of 100. You got to get those that are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And then we basically graded and we are compared to everybody by the nature to say, are you better or worse than the average person? And from school days, we taught marks need to be good so you can get into university. Julie, there's a very lovely video on the internet of this gentleman who's very young, and I don't know if you watched it. And he sees this, he has to walk to school every day. And he sees this guy in a tricycle driving past, and he gets a tricycle. Then he gets tricycle and he's like, no. Then he sees the person in the motorbike. He's like, no, I want the motorbike. Then he gets a motorbike. He's like, no, no, I want a car because of the rain. Then when he has the car, the lovely red convertible, he sees the helicopter flying and he wants the
Oh,
helicopter. So we, I'm not saying we ingrained, but society naturally says to us, we need to sort of have that competitive edge. I'm not going to say keeping up with the Joneses, but generally speaking, we want to earn more. We want to be the best that we can. And in that process, it ultimately means comparing, us to each other. And also, we grew up where people are saying, my son is like this, and my daughter is like that, and his cousin is like that. So, our society alludes itself to naturally comparing people to each other. That also creates, as much as it's in the good spirit and it's meant to sort of encourage and motivate people, it also can create a situation where little Simon is sitting and he's thinking, but my cousin Sipo is doing so well and I'm not like this. And it can affect the psyche, to your point. It can affect your levels of stress. And it can definitely lead to burnout because we naturally want to compare ourselves because we possibly want to try and be a bit better, if that makes sense.
yeah, but I guess that uh, the downside to that thinking is you could be doing a lot of self harm because
Absolutely.
your self
Mm.
talk would be so negative that you
Yes,
keep putting yourself down, and then you just,
absolutely.
you kind of kill all motivation within yourself,
Mm,
and you
mm.
stop achieving, you stop trying, and you could kind of end up either self harming or just not
Yeah.
making any progress in the workplace. But having said that, when we talk about, let's look at the most common workplace conditions or behaviors that lead employees towards burnout. Now, I know we're using the workplace as an example, but this
Mm.
can, of course, relate to any area of life. It could be, like we said, in the
Absolutely.
schoolroom, in the kitchen, wherever.
Absolutely, Julie. I did some work for a lot of foundations throughout the last 44 years of my life. And I always tell people as psychologists, our clients are individuals, communities, and organizations. As much as we are organizational psychologists, we do have a bit of a duty at some point, I believe personally, to positively impact the community because our community and our organization are ultimately comprised of people. And to your point, it does affect everybody of all ages, all races, all demographic, because we all experience the stress. But just to go back to your point about the self-talk before I forget, I actually did my honors study on the power of inner speech. And Julie, you're so on the money when you say that those internal messages that we tell ourselves in the mirror in the morning when we're brushing our teeth or driving to work or we're in our Uber or we're having a moment of reflection, that is where the power and the magic comes into it. If you are in that negative spiral where your thoughts are looping and you're having these negative sort of self-defeating or self, PhD, pull him or pull her down thoughts, you're not going to be able to get out of the situation you're in. That is where you need the support. And then to go back to answer your other question, in the organization, there is a plethora of factors that can impact a person's level of engagement and motivation, which can ultimately lead to burnout. Leaving out remuneration, which is probably one of the biggest gripes people have, to say, I'm not really getting paid what I'm supposed to get paid. But there's things like, team culture, gossiping, people didn't respond to my emails. I've got no friend at work. I'm not appreciated at work. People don't recognize me as an individual at work. I'm just a cog. And in our business, with my clients, I always tell them, if you behave in a values-based manner, the work and the money will come. But we often forget that, in organizations, there are people behind the keyboard. We aren't just keyboard ninjas. We aren't robots. There's people behind the desktop sending those emails. There are people behind the Teams and the Zoom and the Slack and answering the phone. So you must remember that. And people carry emotions with themselves to work. So to your point, we don't get to work in the morning, switch off, and then become this sort of perfect employee and then go home and the stress is there. We have a very emotional relationship and connection with what we do because it almost defines us. So to your point, it could be a line manager, and I want to just spend a bit of time there. Over and above your loved ones and your family and those closest to you, I've always believed that from my earlier days in one of the banks in the country, where I did a lot of work for them, I always realized that your relationship with your line manager and secondarily your team is the most important relationship you can even have in the organization. That relationship is the sanctity where which you take your motivation and energy. And if that relationship is bad, constant phone calls, constant emails, no feedback, bringing you down, disparaging you, not living the values, not treating you like a human being, no, you will never last in that environment, and you'll probably leave immediately, because that means now you are not psychologically safe. You are being disparaged, you are being brought down, and there's no platform where you are growing and being nurtured. And I'm not saying being loved, because at work, technically we shouldn't really have friends. We should have colleagues that we have rapport with, because we're there to do a work and we get a salary. But if there's no platform where you are encouraged and groomed to become the best, most magical version of yourself, you're not going to want to go to work in the morning. You're going to want to work slowly, take extra smoke breaks, take extra coffee breaks. You're going to come in a bit late. You're going to leave a bit early. So over and above everything else, motivation, engagement, values, culture, remuneration, your relationship to your line manager is possibly the biggest factor that can contribute to your well-being, mental health, stress, and as you've said it earlier on, Jules, burnout.
Okay, we've got to go for an ad break, but I want to leave you with this comment, and you can respond after the break. Now, when you talk about the most important relationship in a corporate environment is with your line manager, you're not saying Brown knows the manager, are you? That's
No.
number one. And
No.
number two, obviously, there's another saying, and that is people don't leave companies, they leave managers, they leave the immediate line manager.
Exactly.
So you'll come back to me right after the ad break, which will be in about 2 minutes' time.
Thank you, Jules.
Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and Freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
You South African, of course. You anxious about the future. We've got you covered. Build on your wealth portfolio with Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange. Visit us at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road, Musgrave, Durban, or call us on 031 202 4700 for more information. Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
For the first time, I can dream again.
The Africa Muslims Agency Orphan Hope Program provides the food, clothing, and basic support needed by thousands of children across the world. Every child deserves a chance at a hopeful future.
For 15,000 rands, you can transform our lives with the AMA Orphan Hope Program.
Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Dad, these Frymax chips are so tasty.
Wow, that really takes me back. My dad bought me a Frymax chips every day after school. They were my favorite when I was your age as well. Quality is at the very heart of what we do, and that's why we ensure that every Frymax packet is filled with the beautiful goodness and flavor-packed taste that you've come to expect from us since 1982. Frymax, from generation to generation.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media, humanitarian journalism.
Welcome back. I'm talking to Ras Naidoo. He's an industrial psychologist based in KZN. We are talking burnout. And perhaps you have a comment to my two previous comments.
I was trying to find a nice metaphor, Julian. I think about, you typically you watch these TV series and you see these employees in the organizations that just do exactly what the line manager or the boss wants. They're prepared to do anything. They follow the boss around. They sort of your yes man. They just agree. They may have their own opinion, but they keep it to themselves. And that is what you would consider brown nosing, where you're literally schmoozing to get ahead and you're hoping that your line manager will take you there. But in this day and age, with the Gen Zs and the baby boomers, with the baby boomers being phased out, millennials being phased out, with the Gen Zs, they can work anywhere in the world. And they have changed the work contract fundamentally in the sense that they don't need to impress any organization. They can walk out today without a 30-day leave. So the issue of brown nosing, I think slowly in the organization, it's going to be eroded because people are now working mostly online. So you aren't in the office. And then whereas 20 or 30 years ago, it was like, you listen to your boss, you do what he or she says, you won't get fired, you'll keep your job. I think that dynamic has changed and people have just amended their psychological contract to an organization. So I'm in no way advocating brown nosing whatsoever. But to your second point, I think when I started doing psychology, I think it was back in 2006, it was something like 73% of people actually, to your point, don't leave the organization. They don't leave the values or the money or the car or all the perks. They leave the line manager if the relationship is toxic, if the relationship is like if you put a marble in a can, it's just noise. There's no nurturing, there's no support, there's no guidance, there's no platform of getting better. And now you see the youngsters, they want learning opportunities, cross-function. And then secondly, I think now that number's probably in the higher 80%, where more and more people now are saying, I left because my boss and I just didn't get along. And it isn't about race or culture or creed or gender or whatever. For me, as an IOP, my business and I, we're all about the organizational values. If you can't live those values of integrity and respect, or whatever your organizational values are, if you don't, and I always say, if you don't exercise your values muscles every day and bring those into the conversations and the engagements, you basically up the creek without a paddle. So for me, the relationship with the line manager is paramount. There also is a second tier there, Julie. Your line manager's peers also can have an impact, and your team can also have an impact. But ultimately, I believe your line manager has to have your back. If you're falling in the organization, you should be able to go and say, open the door and say, listen, I'm struggling with A, B, C, and D. These are my options. What do you recommend? How can I go forward? Are you going to support me? If your line manager can't support you, then basically you alone, you alienated, you got no one to help you and support you, and you basically are alone in the organization. Thanks, Julie.
All right, let me ask. We do know now, you've talked about Gen Z, and we do see the
Yes.
shift in a corporate, we see the shift in the workplace, and this is a global shift. And I guess in 5 years' time, perhaps even sooner, I know that in COVID, we started operating under those conditions, work from home, and now
Yes.
Gen Z seem to have adopted and adapted to that way of working. It's a global trend. But whilst we still have large corporates in business and we still have people going into the office, I'm kind of wondering the responsibility of the line manager, and are there perhaps early warning signs that managers, employees should look out for before burnout becomes severe?
Absolutely, Julian. I will share there's a massive conference happening in Dubai next week on exactly this: mental health, burnout, and stress. It's about 200 CEOs and CHROs across the world. And the CEO of Interbeing Leadership is actually speaking at the conference, because I know Interbeing Wellness and Leadership are doing some wonderful work, to your point, exactly that, to say there's got to be signs before someone burns out. And those could be some, for example, you missing deadlines, stuff that you would have nailed easily before, you making mistakes. You come into work and your energy is not what it's supposed to be. You don't put your hand up for what you normally would. You tend to be a bit quieter in meetings than you normally are. You tend to be less responsive than you normally are. You basically not yourself, because your system now, there's some sort of stress in the system, and those warning signs are apparent. For example, someone like myself talks a lot. If I go to a meeting and I don't speak, people will ask me, Ras, what's wrong? Because they're used to the fact that I'm engaging and I'm giving my opinion and I'm giving advice. So when something is remiss and the system is broken, and people around you will notice the behavior. You probably won't be sleeping. You'll have bags under your eyes. You probably will just forget to even iron your shirt in the morning because you're just bored to get to work. You don't even care. So there are definitely telltale signs. And there's a lot of work being done now in the wellness space around the world, where people are now saying there's wellness indicators, there's a survey you can take online and post that. And that is what we basically in my company do. And if you allow me later, I'm happy to leave my number. If anybody's struggling, you can always contact me and I'll always help them. But there's got to be indicators, like, and I use the example of a car. If you're going straight, no, and you want to go left, you indicate left, tell you're going left. Indicate right, indicate right. There's got to be telltale signs: diet, physicality, your physical appearance, how aesthetic you look, your eating habits, your hobbies, how you spend your money. And I don't want to spend too much time, but we don't have time. But substance abuse is also linked to burnout, because before burnout happens, you will see that there's an element of 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4, becomes 5, of whatever the person is doing. And that is where people need to be aware. So I just want to quickly just mention one thing. For me, the most important thing, Julie, in this whole burnout conversation is you need to be self-aware and you need to listen to your body. If you cut yourself with a knife today, your body will heal by tomorrow, because your body doesn't want to be exposed to the air outside. Your body will heal itself. You need to listen to what your body is saying. Aches and pains, pimples, muscle cramps, stomach ache, headache, loss of appetite. Your body will tell you when something is not right. So self-awareness for me is the most pivotal step in terms of what is happening with me, why is it happening, and then also I always encourage people to have an emotional weather chart, CHART. So every morning you say, out of 10, today I'm feeling 8, lovely. In the afternoon I'm feeling 4, okay. Tomorrow morning I'm feeling 7, afternoon I'm feeling 3. And then you come to Friday, you're like, every morning I'm feeling wonderful, but in the afternoon I'm feeling weak. And you got to unpack to say, why, what is happening? So you need to start self-regulating, becoming self-aware of what's happening. And if you lack that self-awareness, Julie, that is possibly when the stress becomes amplified exponentially faster, quickly. And that is when burnout creeps in quickly, because you're not making the necessary and the requisite adjustments you need to sort of curb the stress that's coming into your system. Thank you, Julie.
And of course, it's not only the workplace.
No.
I suppose there would also be a situation where you're going to start dreading going to work. So you may show up, but not emotionally.
Absolutely.
You kind of show up, but you're not vested in
Yes.
the company, in your work, in your project, etc. And
Not
that
at all.
also would indicate that there's something not right here. Let's wrap up
Yes.
then. And from a company perspective, what systems or policies can employers implement to reduce burnout and to improve employee well-being? And most of these big corporates have
EAP
wellness
programs.
programs. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
How much, how much of trust is
Good
I mean,
question.
really,
Yeah.
because people wonder, I'm coming to you with my problems. I'm going to complain about my line manager. What happens after this?
Yes.
Is this report going to the CEO? Is it going direct to my manager? Am I
Exactly.
doing more? So what's your response to that?
It's almost like who you're going to talk to, who you're going to call, the Ghostbusters or not. Yeah, but I think there, Julie, you mentioned a very important point. A lot of people are a lot of people are slightly apprehensive to use company provided wellness providers because they don't know where the report is going. They don't know how anonymous the feedback is, and they don't know to what extent it is reported. For example, there's lots of places I'm not going to mention any names now in the country that where they go into an organization and they'll provide your counseling for you and your family, and that can extend to legal, financial, and psychosocial. So more so than those sort of platforms, Julie, I am a big advocate of your line manager needs to be the one that is the litmus test. Your line manager in those one-on-one monthly conversations must just check, are you okay? Where's your energy at? When I talk about the pillow test, if you wake up in the morning and you put your head on the pillow and you're like, I don't want to go to work today, that is that for me is a warning symptom. Your line manager is the one that needs to be able to link you to the resources available. Companies have extensive wellness programs. They have on-site gyms, they have on-site spas, they have massage parlors on site, they have hairdressers, anything to make. But I think for me, the mindset and the psychological safety of all of this starts with, once again, the line manager, where the line manager must know that Russ is having a bad week. I need to do something to help him. And that conversation for me, once again, it's the platform where everything stems from. So companies spend money, on lots of mechanisms and methodologies and practices to make sure. But then again, how sustainable is it? How trusted is it? Varies from company to company. Can companies afford it? How trusted it is? Once again, I'll come back. Your line manager is the one that needs to be the one that provides the platform of mental health and safety and wellness. Definitely.
Ras Naidoo, industrial psychologist. What a lovely conversation. Wish we had more time, but hopefully in the future we will get together again and talk some more.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you, Julie. So I can't leave my number for those that need any assistance. Is that possible?
Please,
yes.
You can. Go ahead. Please give us your number.
So it's quite easy. And I mean, I've got a network. It's 08. It's very easy. 08 2627 2627.
Got it.
2627 again. So it's fairly easy. 08 2627 2627. I'm available on WhatsApp for individuals, corporates, communities, companies, because it reminds me of the boat where there's a hole on the one side and other guys are like saying, the hole's not on my side. It's our country. It's all in the same boat. If South Africa can beat the Indians in the cricket in 2 balls yesterday on the weekend, let's get together and let's help each other, because ultimately we are one nation. That's what Madiba wanted. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
You're welcome.
Till the next
Have
time,
a lovely
go
afternoon,
well.
Julie. Bye-bye.
And you.
Take it
Bye.
easy. Bye-bye.
12:31 exactly, and our next guest is standing by, and she is Marion Wagner, and we are going to be talking about Breadline Africa and how it transforms communities.